I think, therefore I am not. Only when the mind is silent, I am. After Dimensions, things got a little hectic. There were literally 5 different topics that opened up for me to talk about, and I didn't know which one to cover. Fortunately, I had this one saved on the back burner, so while I figure out which order to do these next ones in, we can talk about meditation. There's quite a bit going on with meditation than most people realize. The average person will tell you that meditation is simply a tool to calm you down, when in fact, that's probably the least important thing it's good for. We're going to talk a lot more about that soon, but first I want to tell you a story about Robert Monroe. Now, if you were to read his biography on Wikipedia, you'll learn that Robert Monroe was a radio broadcasting executive that was researching the effects of sound patterns on the brain and sleep learning. Then he started exploring out-of-body states of consciousness and formed his own company, the Monroe Institute. And that's about all you'll learn. Unfortunately, that's not really what he did. He learned so much more than anyone today will accept. In fact, he found out more about the nature of the universe than any modern scientist could tell you. The stuff that he has written about seeing and doing out of body is incredible. He's completely mapped out a whole nother world. You might think of him as the Marco Polo of the next world. We've explored the lands and the oceans, and now we're exploring the heavens or the dimensions of consciousness. In his book Ultimate Journey, Robert Monroe goes to great lengths to map out the human mind as observed from a more conscious understanding. This is what he says. As human minds, we are what we think. We are also what others think. Most of this has little to do with our physical bodies when we go below the surface. To deal with this more closely, let us create a model of the human mind as it is and operates in practice, a pragmatic model if you like. Imagine it structured in layers, like an onion, and let us work from the in to out. At the very core is the core self. This is the original human mind, the sum of our experiences without limitation. The inner core is composed of what we have lived and consciously thought to date, the emotions and dreams we've experienced, whether we remember them or not, the pains and the pleasures, the daydreams, wishes, and hopes. This is our essence, our spirit. It is who we really are. Above that is the animal sub-self. This is the layer that is most difficult to control. This is where the filtering, discoloration, and contamination takes place. The problem is that we think we need to rely on it or else we can't remain physically human. Physiologically, it is the cluster consisting of the mammalian brain and the limbic system. Above that is the conscious mind. This layer can be identified as what you think you are. However, it is entirely different from knowing what you are. The reason for this is that only a part of the inner core is available to the conscious you. Hence there is much distortion, as expression has to pass through the animal sub-self. The conscious mind may be wholly accurate, but some areas may give an opposite interpretation from that of your core self. Though much of this layer is deliberately hidden from others, a considerable part is expressed in your outer self. Because it is so strong, we have no choice in this. This layer is also complicated by belief systems. For many of us, the complexity becomes a maze. It is no surprise that most of us don't find a clear way out. The next outward layer is the human mind external. This is what we think others think of us. This is a grand mixture because part of it is intuitive, non-verbal communication, which gets confused with what our sensory and analytical perception tells us. This layer is constantly changing with new experience and new perception. It is also controlled heavily by cultural context. We develop these artificial and synthetic drives of motivations, which most often leads to mental and physical dysfunction. Instead of being yourself, you begin to lead a totally reactive existence, which is what many people do. If you allow this lifestyle to take over, it can be a living hell. Moving outward, the next level is the human mind role. This is like the skin, what you want others to think of you. This is fairly simple. It is the presentation of the self. Mostly, it is set by the acceptability and needs of the world around you, superimposed hopefully with waves and pulsing thrusting from your inner core. The presentation of self is careful and usually covered with a sheen of deception. In hard cases, no signs of the inner layers ever even appear, even under great stress. And finally, the outermost layer, much larger than you'd expect, is composed of others' thoughts of you. Consider yourself as existing wherever and whenever another person or being thinks of you, even only occasionally, living almost through memories, but by creating those memories, they are connecting with you, and they do exist all around you. It is because of this that most often, others' perceptions of you have very little awareness of what's in your inner core self. The disguise and filtration are in the way. Many people have a hard time connecting with their core self, their spirit. Most don't even know that it exists, though that is changing. So, moving on, let's answer the biggest question here. What is the point of meditation? Well, everyone has a different answer to this question. Early research showed that meditation was good for lowering blood pressure, lifting depression, reducing cholesterol, and making physical changes to the brain. These are all incredibly Western views about meditation. There are lots of different types of meditation, but in the traditional Buddhist sense, all of these different forms of meditation all have the same common end result, which was spiritual enlightenment. And through that comes the elimination of suffering. This elimination comes with the understanding of a unity consciousness, which we talked about in Lesson 4, realizing the oneness of all things. See, the traditional intent of meditation is not to eliminate suffering by lowering blood cholesterol or stress, but to eliminate suffering by shifting perspective. Meditation teaches you to turn your attention away from the mundane physical and personal experiences of the world, where problems seem significant, and turn to experience life through a broader, more interconnected perspective, being one with everything. The process transcends and changes our sense of self, so that our problems seem less meaningful and less troubling. The point is not to reduce the physical cause of discomfort through improved health, but to change the importance we place on that discomfort. Maybe it's time to revisit that quote from the beginning. I think, therefore I am not. Only when the mind is silent, I am. When the mind is silent, you can connect fully with the core self, the spirit, going beyond the conscious mind and the animal sub-self, and being in the I am. We haven't really talked about things for you to do since Lesson 3, where we went over the steps to animal communication. So now I'm going to teach you a very basic meditation that you yourself can do. Start by wearing some comfortable clothing and either sit or lie down and become relaxed. First, focus on each part of your body individually. First your feet, then your legs, then your thighs, hands, for about 10 to 20 seconds each, and just focus on them becoming relaxed. Once you've done that all the way to the top of your head, begin to count silently in your head from 100 down to 0. Take your time, it's not a race. If any stray thoughts come into your head, simply ignore them and keep counting. Try not to get distracted. Once you've reached 0, restart the count from 30, and count from 30 down to 0 again. After you've done this a second time, sit in the aura of silence that you've just created for yourself. By this time, your mind should be at peace, and you might even have an experience. Don't expect anything though, just allow whatever happens to happen. Be in the I am. You'll know when you're ready to finish the session. If you're going to take this seriously, I recommend that you practice on a daily basis. 10 minutes a night even, it's all you need, unless you want to do it more. However, the amount and duration is totally up to you. If meditation isn't what you're looking for, don't feel obliged to start. Finally, let's talk about binaural beats. Binaural beats were first developed by Robert Monroe at the Monroe Institute in experiments to induce different states of consciousness and out-of-body experiences. They are essentially audio tracks that place a single tone in each ear, slightly different from the other, which actually creates a third tone in your head. One ear goes woo, and the other tone goes woo, and in your head you hear woo 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 woo. It's pretty cool. What this does, in effect, is actually change your brain frequency, putting you in a different mental state. If you Google it, you can find HemiSync, which stands for Hemisphere Synchronization. This is the Monroe Institute's brand of binaural beats, which is very professional, and they have both guided and free-flow meditations that will help you get into different states. The other brand I want to talk about is iDozer, who are a separate company. They don't focus on guided meditations, but they're more interested in the effects. iDozer has tons of different audio tracks that put you in a range of mental places, from LSD effects to chakra boosting to astral projection. There's a reason they call it digital drugs. I know what you're thinking. Does it work? Absolutely. Does it work if you don't know how to meditate? Not so much. If a regular Joe decided to try it out while listening to these tones without any meditational background, it probably wouldn't work so well. You have to be good at getting into a deep meditational state before you start using these tones. If you're serious about trying these and experiencing these effects, it's almost crucial that you learn to meditate on your own first. Get really good at it. A final word of advice: if you are really serious about getting into meditation, join a class. When it comes to meditation, personal guidance from a trained and experienced instructor is paramount. It will accelerate your progress tenfold and you will shoot up to a very high level in no time. And that's all I have for today. Happy meditating.